Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Science fiction, the great teacher, the great inspiration. It helps us see the endless possibilities of life. So let's be inspired together.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We are not sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Hello, boys and girls. It's the Commodore. How's everybody doing? Been a long time since I've done one of these videos because my number one priority lately has been to discuss politics on my other channel. And as you can probably imagine, with Donald Trump being president, he's created a whole plethora of things to talk about, and it's been very difficult to keep up with him. I wanted to do a video here on this topic I'm going to talk about here for a while, but never could find the time to do it. So I feel like today is the day to do it because I've had a conversation with a friend who brought up a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about in this video here. And of course, it's been something that, you know, when I've been on different websites like Reddit and Quora, you know, I've confronted Trek fans on there and had to repeat myself many times about things concerning Star Trek. And you know, I often like to try to do things outside of Star Trek on these videos, but it seems like I always keep coming back to that. Okay. Not because I want to, but because there's so much to discuss about it, especially these days where Star Trek really is just in name only. It doesn't really have anything that one would remember of Star Trek from years back. So there's been a lot of back and forth of fans talking and arguing and disseminating why they don't like the new stuff and feel the old stuff was better. Okay. So that being said, let me open up here with this what happened here. As my friend and I was talking, I had sent a picture of Mr. Rogers with a goatee, you know, and wearing a Mirror Universe badge, and it says children are weak. Okay, like in the Mirror Universe, Mr. Rogers would be like that. Okay, he would hate kids. Which I replied to. I said, you know, that kind of illustrates exactly where Star Trek has taken the Mirror Universe into this fucking ridiculous parody of itself. Okay, it's not taken seriously like it was the very first time we actually were introduced to that back in the original series. Okay, it was taken more seriously then. But over the years, and I think many Star Trek fans would agree with me, every time we revisited the Mirror Universe, especially in Deep Space Nine, it's always been less and less serious, dealt with seriously. It got to be comical in too many ways. Sort of like writers just wanting to have fun with the characters without having to worry about stepping on continuity, so they make a Mirror Universe episode where they can shit all over the characters and then nobody cares. That's kind of the attitude we got from that. And it's gotten really bad even after the most recent Star Trek streaming movie that they made had to do with Section 31 in the Mirror Universe, and nobody liked it. Okay, unsurprisingly, because both Section 31 and the Mirror Universe have been beaten to death and brought no real continuity or any justification into the storytelling that goes on in Star Trek. So it was really kind of redundant, and I predicted that it would fail, and thus it did. But to go back to these shows here, when they started with Star Trek Discovery, it was said by Alex Kurtzman and others that they weren't going to hold themselves over the fire to make sure that it had anything that looked or sounded anything like what was made before that. In other words, continuity meant shit. Okay? They didn't care about what came before it. They were going to start their own version of Star Trek. Okay? Now, this is odd coming from Alex Kurtzman, who said that he's a Star Trek fan. I can't imagine a fan wanting to do what he tried to do, okay? It's just, a fan would not shit on what was made before that. They'd have a little more respect for that, I think. So, I don't believe him when he said he was a fan of Star Trek. He may have worked on some episodes here and there when Voyager was on and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you're a fan. It just means you had a job and you were being paid to do it. So he gets offered to come back to Trek and do something, and it's like, well, if I do it, I'm going to do it my way. And Paramount, who was always so eager to make money off of their franchise, is like, okay, sure, you know. And it got a rough start, but eventually it did. And when it did, the fans just like, what the hell have you made? Okay. Of course, the younger fans liked it because, hey, they weren't really watching all the older stuff. This was something new for them to watch, okay? So, yeah. I can see how the younger folk watching Discovery would have thought, yeah, oh, this is cool. Sure, it's cool. It looks cool. I mean, but it's not in the same canon as Star Trek that we know it, okay? Why didn't they just make their own science fiction series, you know, call it something else? You know, why they didn't do that instead of doing what they did, I really don't know. Maybe they figured that it wouldn't sell if it didn't have the name Star Trek written somewhere on it. And it was just the branding that they were looking for to draw as many people to watch it as possible. In other words, they cast out a big fucking net to grab as many demographics as they could to watch it. But what they created was chaos, because you got the older fans, who people are calling gatekeepers, but you know what? That's a compliment, not an insult. The older fans arguing with the younger fans, and the younger fans saying, oh, well, you guys are just gatekeepers and you guys don't like change and all that. No, we do. I mean, the very idea that we're Star Trek fans is a recognition that we know things change, okay? But what we don't like is people writing stories that contradict in every single way what came before it. That's what we don't like, okay? It's not that we hate Star Trek. We just want to see a little more foundation. Okay, we want to see a little more seriousness from the writers out there to say, look, has this topic been dealt with before? And how was it dealt? How will what happened before impact the story I'm writing now? They don't ask those questions. These writers, a lot of them didn't even come from anything science fiction. I heard some of them were from Gilmore Girls, for Christ's sake. So these were like green writers essentially to Star Trek. I'm not saying green as in they were just new writers. No, they were green to Star Trek, meaning they only knew about Star Trek in passing. Maybe they recognized William Shatner as Captain Kirk, but that's about as far as it goes. And so they were tasked to do these stories for Discovery. And after, 2 or 3 seasons, it became pretty obvious and apparent to Paramount that the show was doomed, okay? And so they decided to reinvent it, okay? And even after that, the feelings about the show were already set in stone with a lot of people, so nobody was willing to watch how they were what was going to come from this reinvention of the series. So it was doomed, okay, after just 3 seasons. And you know, a season today is not very long. You know, if you're lucky, you'll get 10 episodes. So I would say that all of Discovery would have been 1 season of Star Trek back in the 80s. Okay, certainly not like it broken up into 4 or 5. Okay, you know, it's weird how things are done now today. But in other words, you know, the show, Paramount tried so hard to promote it, tried to make it sound like it was the greatest version of Star Trek, which it wasn't. Okay, it just wasn't. You know, I'm sorry that it offends certain people and offends those who worked on the show, but it was inferior to what came before it. Now, going back to the conversation I had with my friend, you know, he was saying that, you know, there's a lot of people out there who claim to be Star Trek fans, but they spend a lot of time bitching about it. That's not new to me. I mean, I remember way back in the 80s, people were making fun of TOS, TNG when it was on, and laughing about the inconsistencies, but we kept watching, okay? There was always that element of Star Trek that kept people watching more, all right? And even though, as, you know, the series went on with TNG, you know, we kept spotting, you know, issues there, here and there, where it contradicted something that was done or said in a previous episode. But, you know, we just chalked it up, you know, as something to, you know, talk about later. But it was always a little bit of an annoying thing, because other science fiction shows were on too, not just Star Trek, but there was other shows that were on. And their writers seemed to be working together in those shows. They all had it all planned together. Nobody was writing independently and bringing stuff in without having consulted with the other writers or in some way. Everybody had a direction that they were following. And it was very clear, like if you watch Babylon 5, you're going to see from start to finish that was, you know, everybody was on the same course, okay? Things that were done, the characters that did things, it all stayed consistent, okay? And it makes me a little jealous of these other shows. It's not that I hate them. No, I like Babylon 5 and other shows that were on, you know, like Quantum Leap and whatever, okay? They had continuity. They respected it. But every time it came with Star Trek, and as big of a fandom as it has, okay, and this is really what's puzzling, is the number of people that like Star Trek is astounding. But even with that number, these people, you know, whenever they get online, or whether they were writing articles in a magazine at the time, back in the 80s, it was Starlog or something, people were pointing out flaws, okay, and trying to, and hope, and doing it so in hope that maybe somebody at Paramount would listen. But apparently not, okay? But I'm not going to say that, you know, every episode of TNG or every episode of TOS was flawed, okay? Let's just take, for instance, in one episode in the early of the season 1, Sulu and his landing party were stuck on a frozen planet, and they were freezing to death. Kirk was split in two, and they were trying to figure out how to fix the damn transporter so they can beam those people back up. Lo and behold, you know, the ship is designed with a shuttle bay. Okay, and they never used it, okay? But then, what, 3-4 episodes into that first season, they're using a shuttlecraft without explaining why they never used it in that one episode where people's lives were in danger, okay? They never explained that. And that's kind of what we fans are trying to say. Well, if you're going to do something like that, if you're going to make changes that kind of, you know, harken back to something that was done and wasn't done, you've got to put a little bit of explanation in there. What they could have easily said it like, well, our shuttlecrafts were all being repaired, or we didn't have any because it wasn't Tuesday, or whatever. You know, some fucking excuse. Anything, just to give people something to grab onto and say, okay, now it makes sense. Okay, don't just introduce something into a thing that wasn't there as a thing before, okay? That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, I could understand why the writers were trying to make this such a you know, a heart-pounding thing. You know, the transporter's not working. They didn't want to offer any solutions other than the transporter itself being the solution, okay? But at the same time, it was nonsensical, as it came out later, that they had shuttlecraft, but they could have used them, and, you know, and there goes back to my argument here. You know, there's things like that. And that's what I'm talking about when I say about inconsistencies, is that if the writers were paying attention to each other's work, they probably wouldn't have made those kind of goofs. You know, you have to remember, in TOS, a lot of the writers came from shows like Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, where each episode is something different. It has different characters, it's a different story, it's a different time. You know what I'm saying? So nobody gave a shit about what was done before, because it was, you know, a TV series like that, where every episode they're bringing you something new to look at. They tried that before on Netflix. They had a show, was it Black Mirror, Broken Mirror, whatever the hell it was, but where every episode had its own little story to tell, okay, which I liked, because it kind of reminded me back to the older shows that were on TV. And we certainly could use more of that, I think. I think we could use more shows like that. But with Star Trek, it's not a show like that. It's like a soap opera, okay? Where, you know, you got characters you're developing through the course of the series, which means you can't just drop things that's happened to these characters before and have it not impact them later on in the show. Like if something like let's pick up, you know, Kirk, when what was it with the one about him going back in time there with Edith Keeler and all that, having that happen to him, and then the next episode it's like, you know, it doesn't, you know, there's no impact. You know what I'm saying? It certainly was picked up in novels and stuff like that was written about it, but in the TV show as a whole, you would never even remember, or even there was no mention of Edith Keeler again after that. Okay, it's like it never happened. That's what I'm talking about, is that you can't do that with a show like Star Trek, okay? If your characters are going to be the same characters week after week after week after week, you got to keep these people inconsistent with each other, with what they've done, okay? Like, let's say Star Trek Voyager, where you had Captain Janeway, where she was trying to get her ship safely through Borg space, and then the Borg are at war with species A472. Okay, she was fretting over how I can get the crew home, and at the same time she comes up with this outlandish idea that, oh, we got a weapon we can use. We can give it to the Borg, and the Borg can defeat their enemies, and we can use it as leverage to buy us time to get through Borg space. It's like, okay, so you're going to commit genocide using the Borg as proxy in order to fulfill, you know, the 150 people you got in your ship to get home. You're going to sacrifice billions of fucking other aliens just so your crew can get home that much faster. Okay, on the surface of that, it was troubling to me. I didn't like that idea that Janeway would do something like that, okay? And frankly, and luckily, the writers were smart enough to put Chakotay in my position of trying to talk her out of it, because it was really a stupid thing to do. It's anti-Starfleet, anti-Federation. Okay, if they would never allow an alien race to have the transporter that isn't developed enough to have it, then, and they have this established law that tells them, you know, you cannot do this, okay, and you could lose your command over it and all that, then why would she be of the kind of person who would do or come up with the idea to eradicate a whole species just so she could get home? It makes no sense to what we understand about Starfleet, okay? All right. Well, after that episode, and like several seasons later, she runs across another starship that's trapped in the Delta Quadrant, and they're using these aliens to power their ship to get these big bursts of warp speed so they can get home quicker. Okay, it's killing those aliens they're using, but they're using them to get home quicker. Janeway has a huge fit with it. I mean, she turns into Captain Ahab. Okay, she's willing to commit murder on her own ship by torturing somebody to get information from him about where the captain is going. Okay, all right, and it's like, well, wait a goddamn minute here. You just did like 3 seasons back, you know, seemed to have no problem with eradicating a whole fucking species just so you can get home. But these people are doing it, and no, that can't happen. No. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about inconsistencies. Okay? When writers are not following each other's fucking work, they're going to make mistakes. And they'd never learn. Look, we have to have all the writers in the same room at the same time so we can work these stories out and understand when somebody says, well, wait a minute, we just did something like that and we didn't, you know, okay, nobody's there. It's like there's no fucking people work. It's like when you run a company, you got briefings, you got company execs that come in at the round table, if you want to call it, who map out courses for their business. Everybody is together on this, okay? That's how these companies work. So that way they don't fuck up, you know, or they don't make mistakes, or they try to benefit a company in some way. They don't everybody working their own little thing. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. They're not being consistent because they're not working together. Now, how do they deal with this problem years later? They say, well, forget everything you saw in Star Trek before because we're just going to reinvent it. So in other words, the writers don't have to show up every day to sit here and talk about story ideas because we're not going to do a consistent Star Trek. We're just going to start from scratch and we'll call it Star Trek, but it ain't Star Trek. Okay? We're just going to reinvent the fucking wheel. So everything is new. What was old is just gone. But we're going to start everything new. That's how they got around that. Okay? But you know what? Even with the new Trek, they're still making mistakes like that. Okay? Because again, what the same problem you did before and didn't correct, they're doing it again and it's still making the same problem and they're not correcting that. So, like I said, that's what happens when you have people not coming together in a conference call and having these goddamn discussions here as a group. All the writers, okay? They all have to be involved in the process of an entire series. You cannot fucking just dump story from this writer, that writer, and that writer, okay? If nobody's watching each other's work, you can't do it. You cannot maintain an honest-to-goodness series. That's how they did it with Babylon 5. Everybody was on the same fucking page because they all had to work together to maintain the consistency of the story and where it was going to eventually end up. They already had an idea of where Babylon 5 was going to be at the end of the series. They had to make sure that the course remained the same. So it got there. Jesus. But like I said, with Star Trek, it's really a problem that has been its Achilles heel since the very beginning. And you would think they would have figured out, especially during the 70s and 80s when TV shows were being made, that, this is the way a TV show is accepted. We're not trying to do individual episodes. We're trying to do a story where the same characters every week, okay, come back and, they learn along the way. They figure out who they are along the way. They develop along the way. And we have to make sure that development continues and maintains. So that way the integrity of those characters does not get compromised. Okay? Everybody's got to be on the same fucking page. One of the worst problems, I think, with characters, okay, has been Captain Sisko, okay, from Deep Space Nine. His character to me was all over the map. All right? He even to this day, I can't understand what kind of a man he is, okay? Because he does things 1 minute, doesn't do it the next. And, you know what I'm saying? He's just a very unfocused character. I mean, Janeway is kind of unfocused, but not as bad. But Sisko was a very unfocused character. They started him off as a regular human being, and then in a few episodes in, they have him encounter religious Vedeks on Bajor, and they deem him an emissary, which was something that was like, oh, so just because he went into the wormhole and talked to some aliens in the wormhole, now he's considered an emissary. Well, they didn't say anything about that in the episode where he did. Okay, he just went in there, dealt with some emotional issues, got spat back out. Okay, and nobody said anything about, oh, this was foretold in a prophecy that you was going, nobody said anything about that, not for like 4 or 5 episodes in, where they introduced Nurse Ratched as a character in the show, okay, as Kai Wynn. Okay, they bring her in there, and then all of a sudden now, his name is stapled with the word emissary. Okay, and it's like, well, if that was such a big, important thing for the Bajoran people, why wasn't it such a big, important thing that Sisko had gone in there, talked to those aliens, prophets, and came out? Okay? Everybody who was a Bajoran should have known that fucking detail in their religion, that one day somebody was going to go in there and meet the prophets and come out, and they would be considered the emissary. They didn't do that. That was an idea that came later, I think, because they wanted to make the character of Sisko a little more interesting. Okay? But I think that it was a contradiction to what they started with. All right? And it never really gelled with him throughout the entire series, okay? It never made any sense. And the reason is look, he's a human being. They're Bajoran. How the hell does that fit into their fucking religion? Okay, do we make religions on Earth, okay, that involve aliens from other worlds one day coming here? You know, no, we don't. So there's no logic to that. That to me never was like, no, this should be just be Bajoran. Okay, this should just be a Bajoran thing. Not doesn't have anything to do with human beings. Okay, but somehow they felt it was necessary to do that. And then, you know, how Cisco, you know, during the Dominion War decided, oh, I'm gonna commit a murder, kill a Romulan to get the Romulan people involved in the war. Totally anti-Starfleet, anti-Federation in idea. Okay, people are saying, well, that shows how tough the war was being. Yeah, okay, I give you that. But if you're going to make your hero a hero, then he's going to have to follow heroic rules. If not, he's a villain. Okay, it was okay to have Berman in Discovery to be, you know, a villain more or less in the opening episode of Discovery. People didn't seem to shit and bitch about that. Okay, but here Cisco plots a murder. Okay, yeah, sure, he was struggling with it, but at the end he says, well, I can live with it. You know, it's like, okay, so in other words, murder means nothing to this guy. Yet he had a fit with Worf, who wanted to kill his brother so his brother would die with honor. And he has a fucking fit that this is not a Klingon station. This is not a Klingon crew. You know, he was giving the lecture to him over that. So again, inconsistencies. Okay, if you're going to make your villain a hero, if you're going to make your character a hero, fine. But if you're going to turn that character into a villain, let's see a progression of that. You know, you don't just take one episode and decide, okay, today he's going to do something stupid. All right. Okay, I mean, yeah, I understand. Like I said, we go back to there was so many people that were dying in the war and stuff, and it was getting to him. Yeah. Okay, I get that. But you know what? Cisco had a really big thing about obeying the uniform. Remember when we went after that Mr. Edison there? Whatever his name is, okay? You betrayed your uniform. When he was just trying to help out his people. Trying to get replicators, and he had a huge fit over that. Okay? All right, you know what I'm saying? There was a lot of things about Cisco that I never could understand about that guy, and I think they deliberately made it that way because the writers wanted Cisco to be something unattainable. They wanted him to be larger than life. They wanted to be a god. They wanted him to be this and that. Okay, that's Ira's Stephen Bear's fucking idea of what a captain is, okay? It doesn't gel with me, okay? So Cisco isn't like one of my favorite captains, okay? He just, to me, he's a very contradictory individual. He's very stubborn, and he does things that he tells other people they can't do, but he does it, you know? It's just, I don't, you know, like I said, that's one of the things. Consistency matters when you're telling a story. It doesn't have to resemble real life, but it does have to have a law of consistency. Okay? Let's take The Wizard of Oz, for Christ's sake. You know, what if somebody told her from the very beginning that those red slippers, if you click the heels together 3 times, you can go home? Then what the hell would have been the purpose of the fucking rest of the... You know? So they had a consistency. She didn't find out about that till the end. Okay? But with Star Trek, you know, they would have told her that, but they had kept going with the story of The Wizard of Oz. They would have told her, oh, anytime you want, you can click your heels together 3 times and return home. But we're still going to travel down the yellow brick road, and we're still going to meet the 3 people, you know, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the fucking Lion. Okay, we're still going to do all of that. Okay? And then find out again, oh, yeah, we can click our heels together and go home. You know, no, that's what Star Trek's been doing, but that's not what they should be doing. You got to be consistent. Every good story ever written that people still quote to these days, okay, all have a consistency to them. The characters are well-rounded, they're developed, they're consistent, and there you go. You got a show. you got a novel. You got a story. And like I said, after all these years with Star Trek, okay, they'd never really followed that rule, okay? And that's been its Achilles heel. And they've had more than enough time to try to fix that problem, but it just seems like nobody ever really understands why they're making these mistakes, why they're making this problem. Now, I granted, this show, Star Trek's been around for, what, 60 years, I guess, 70 years, okay? Yeah, you're going to have your occasional hiccup here and there in the show, right? But that's okay. But when you have the level of fucking inconsistency that keeps popping up over and over again, it gets really annoying. I mean, there's a guy who published 3 fucking volumes of a book about all the fucking problems with Star Trek, from TOS all the way up to, I think it was Voyager at the time when it was published. I got those books. And you wouldn't believe how much shit, you know, that this Star Trek fan found that was like, huh? Okay? There are volumes of this stuff. People, you know, people who love Star Trek are the only ones who can see these things. People who occasionally watch it every now and then, they won't spot that. But we fans understand where the problems lie. And if you don't listen to the fans, you're going to end up derailing yourself and going down a different path, like what's happened now. Star Trek has gone off the rails and is going down a different path. And it's not a path that a lot of fans like, okay? They really don't like it, and they still don't. In fact, you know, I told my friend just the other day, whenever somebody says, oh, there's a new Star Trek whatever coming out, I'm not really excited anymore about it. I'm really not. I still like Star Trek, the older stuff. I will continue to watch reruns of TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager and Enterprise, okay? I'll still watch those. But you know, as for the rest of it, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek, the Kurtzman Star Trek, that stuff to me isn't Trek. And it's really an insult to Trek fans to continue to celebrate the anniversary of Star Trek when what they are making isn't Star Trek. I just watched a goddamn video on YouTube of the recent anniversary party they had there with the I don't know where the hell it was. It was probably in Los Angeles, some fucking place. I don't know. They had a party there, and it was the most laughable, insulting damn thing I ever saw. Okay, I don't know what the hell they were doing. It was a shit show. It was more like a parody. Remember how Saturday Night Live, William Shatner was making fun of, you know, these Star Trek fans that were, you know, people playing Star Trek fans, and he was telling these people to get a life. Well, you know what? That was actually a foreshadowing of what was to come, because basically now, those are the fans today watching this stuff. It's like they're completely out of their element. They don't know what the hell Star Trek is, okay? And all and what they're doing is they're celebrating something that doesn't exist anymore. They keep going to these parties and stuff, and they act goofy and all this stuff, okay? This is what they're doing. These are not what I call serious Star Trek fans. These are just people that are into a fad, as they would call it. It's a fad. Discovery is a fad. Picard is a fad. Strange New Worlds is a fad. Okay? But there's no seriousness about the product they're making. They're just throwing shit on the wall to see what'll stick, what the fans are going to like. But there's no real determination to actually make something that has quality to it. And a lot of things today, quality is something that's lacking in so many TV shows, so many books, so many fucking projects that are out there, even the fucking movies, for Christ's sake. I mean, when's the last time you saw a real good movie that's been put out, you know, in the last year, in the last 2 years, in the last 5 years, okay? Hollywood just isn't there anymore, all right? It would be best if they would just shut it down. Just shut it down like Trump wants to shut down the government. Just shut down Hollywood, okay, and let the old people that are out of there, let them get the hell out of Dodge, okay? And let's start from scratch and get some real talented fucking people back into the industry, because that's what we need, okay? Enough of the shit that they've been making. Seriously. You know? The last fucking movie that I saw was Brave New World. Okay, that was the last one I saw. Captain America. Okay, wasn't that bad. A lot of people hate it. I don't know why they do. It was a good story. It's set up for other stories. Okay, I think people bitch because it's become so common now to bitch about every movie that comes out because, you know, they're so lousy that they just bitch. You know, they don't want to say anything nice. But I think it was worth the money. All right. But before that, I think the last movie I saw was one of those Godzilla films. Okay, that, you know, a -1 I think was. Well, that's going back a little. It used to be, you know, almost every year there'd be at least 3 or 4 movies that I'd be like, oh, I got to see this, I got to see that. Not anymore. Not anymore. They got this one coming out this Friday. I can't remember the name of it. And it's like, you know, it makes no fucking sense. It's like it doesn't know whether it's supposed to be funny or serious or whatever. You know, it just, I'm not really interested in it. It's, I don't know what audience they're targeting. Maybe just looking to get people in the theater so they can start goofing off and throwing popcorn and shit like that. And I don't know what it is. Okay, the last time I went to the movies, the seats in the fucking theater look like they're about ready to be thrown in the dumpster because people have been going in there and wrecking the goddamn things. Okay, I don't know, but all I'm saying is that consistency and talent, quality, we got to bring it back. We the Trek fans, the moviegoers, you know, we need to start demanding better from Hollywood. You know, we really do. If you want to bring back the good old days of what, you know, the golden era of movies and television, which in my mind is the 70s and 80s, okay, if you want to bring those days back, we the people have to fucking, you know, raise our voices here in droves, okay, and say, look, we're not going to fucking pay a dime to any one of your damn movies if you're not going to take and listen to what we want. I mean, isn't that what the whole point of making money is to give the people what they want? When you stop doing that, you're going to lose your ass, you know. So like I said, it's a problem that doesn't seem to want to go away. And unfortunately, I think I've lived through the best times in this country during that period of quality. And what I'm seeing now is like, you know, it's like living in an alternate universe. Nothing matters anymore now. And people just do things to do things. They don't care. You know, Alex Kurtzman, we're just doing Star Trek. We're just stamped the name on it, but we don't care. We don't care. Doesn't mean nothing, you know. And that's really sad because, you know, a lot of people love that show. You know, it created a whole goddamn subculture in this country of people. And now, you know, that subculture is just fading away. There's no interest anymore in that. And how the hell could they have done that? I think Roddenberry would be some fucking pissed what Paramount has done to his franchise. He created that fucking franchise. That should mean something to the writers. Okay? You may not like writing stories that are, you know, inside of somebody's guidelines. But by the Jesus, you don't have the right to write outside those guidelines unless you yourself were involved in making that product. Okay? So if you don't want to write Roddenberry style, go somewhere else. Make your own fucking space show or something like that. Go do that. But you know, if you're going to come in here and work on these projects, then by the Jesus, you're going to fucking follow the formula that made it what it is. Okay? Anyway, I think I've said enough. All right, so, okay. I don't know when I'll be doing another one of these science fiction critiques here, but I hope that, you know, you people get something out of these when I make them. So anyway, if you watch my other stuff, there'll be a video coming out in the political column there. So I hope everyone has a great, however long it is I see you. So take care, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.